Guys, welcome back to Kevin Wilson SBC. I'm excited today to share with you some baseline setups. You know, I get a tremendous amount of emails and comments on social media, and I have learned I am just not able to answer everything like I'd want to. The whole reason I started this suspension channel was to help drag racers. And my thoughts were I would answer every comment, answer every emails, and I guess I've had to learn that's just not possible. The channel has grew to a size that I really did not expect, and I'm very humbled by that. And I just want you guys to know that for every interaction I have with people, whether it's over email or whether it's through my remote suspension tuning services or whatever, that I continue to learn as well. And the remote tuning stuff that I offer on my website has been a tremendous opportunity for me to meet you guys, interact with you guys personally, and help you out with your drag car. So let me just say I'm very thankful for that. I wanted to make this video and use this as an opportunity to answer one question that I get all the time. And that's, Kevin, where do I start with my 4-link setup? Where should I put the bars? How do I go out and have a good, safe first outing in a car that either I have built or I'm designing and I'm fabricating brackets, or I have purchased a used roller and my engine and transmission is very different than the previous person's. I'm going to slicks. They were on radials, blah, blah, blah. Kevin, where do I start? So in this video, I want to take a few minutes and talk about a baseline setup for slicks and a baseline setup for radials. And this will help you get started. You don't have to purchase a remote package from me to get started. You can take this video and use these two baselines as a way to set your car up to go out and do testing. So let's jump in and let's talk about, first of all, let's talk about the slick setup. So here's what I want to do. I want to share on the screen what I would do with a baseline setup for slicks. And if you look at the picture I have on the screen here, I've got it zoomed in. There's no need to see a lot of stuff other than what you're looking at on the screen. And I want to focus on the bottom bar angle and the top bar angles. Here again, this is for a slick baseline setup. On the bottom bar for a slick, I'm really wanting you to start with a level bottom bar. And what I mean by that is it is 0 degrees from the rear end to the chassis hole. Now there's some variance here. If you're 1 degree up or 1 degree down, I'm not going to fret over that. On the bottom bar angle though, if you start angling your bottom bar up on a slick car, you are going to begin to introduce some challenges with the sidewall, especially a big tire slick without tubes. If that bottom bar angle begins to come up, so in other words, from the rear end to the chassis, it's going up. So like if this was my bottom bar here going up to this hole, which is I would not recommend for a baseline setup, you're going to run into issues with standard off-the-shelf shocks, especially single adjustable shocks. Now, if you're buying a set of Penske 7500s with my valving in them from Jerry at Penske, you're going to be fine with a little uphill bar angle. Or if you're buying a set of AFCO big gun shocks from Summit or Jegs or whatever, I don't consider those necessarily normal off-the-shelf shocks. I'm talking primarily off-the-shelf shocks like a Viking off-the-shelf shock for a big tire, or a QA1 DD series off-the-shelf shock. That's hard to say that real fast. If you have a bottom bar angle and you're running a single adjustable off-the-shelf shock, so let's just be real. The most neglected part of a drag car, in my opinion, when it comes to suspension, is people will spend tens of thousands of dollars on so many different things and not put money into their shocks. And that's a huge, huge mistake. But let's say you've blown your entire budget, you've got the car built, and now all you have is this set of 8-year-old DD501 QA1 shocks, and they're double adjustable or single adjustable, but that's all you got. And you have to go out and do some testing with that. I would want a level bottom bar, or I would want a bottom bar angle going down to the chassis. If that's all I had was a set of off-the-shelf QA1 shocks, I would take this bottom bar right here and move it down one hole on the chassis to introduce more squat. Because as you get this bottom bar up on the chassis, you better have some very strong extension valving in that shock. And trust me, I know from experience, a DD501 double adjustable QA1 shock is not going to hold an instant center that is at 100% or higher on a big tire slick car. It's just not going to happen. Trust me on that. So here's a baseline slick setup, level bottom bar, and I want a top bar angle of 10 degrees or less. So I'm shooting for an 8 to 10 degree top bar angle from the rear end down to the chassis. And that's going to give you about a 60-inch instant center here. And let's see if I kept that in play. Yeah, this is a 58.7-inch instant center, 7.3 inches off the ground. And with this chassis setup, which is an actual customer car of mine, it was 83.5% anti-squat. If you have something like this set up on your car, and you have a big tire slick or a small tire slick for that matter, this would be a very safe way to go out to the track. I'm not necessarily no prep now. I'm talking about one of your local tracks with a normal prep, a slick prep, or even a radial prep for that matter. This is going to be a very safe setup for you to go out and do some testing with. Now, let's be real here. Every car is unique. So I really struggled whether I should make a video like this or not, because I wish I could give you the magic 4-link for your car, and it's just not possible. Wheelbase, weight distribution, power levels, two-step versus foot braking, starting line ratio, torque converter setup. There are so many factors that come into setting your car up ideally, which is why I offer the remote tuning service on my website, so that you can have personalized attention from me based on your car. So I was really hesitant, but I am getting asked so much about, Kevin, at least give me a place to start. So the purpose of this video is a place to start and to help you get going. And that's why I have a baseline set up for the slicks here, so that you have a place to start. And if you follow this setup, you can get a good idea of what's going on and what the opportunity is on your big tire slick car. One thing I want to point out here is, on this baseline setup, this rear end spread is something that I do pay attention to. Let's say you don't have any plotting software, or you're not using the plotting software on baseline suspensions on the website. If you can get me a bottom bar level to the ground, a top bar between 8 and 10 degrees going down to the chassis, and a rear end spread of around 10 inches. And if you notice, the rear end spread here is 10.25 inches. I really don't want to go heavier than that on the rear end spread for a big tire slick and a 4-link. So the rear end spread is going to dictate how hard and fast it plants that tire. The more spread on the rear end, generally, the more violent that initial planting of the tire is going to be. And here again, with a slick, big or small, you're trying to not crush the sidewall too terribly bad based on the prep surface you're running on. So some key things to take away: a bottom bar that's level or plus or minus 1 degree. If you're going to go up on the chassis 1 degree, you better have your shocks have to be more customizable with a better rebound extension valving. An 8 to 10 degree downhill upper bar, whether it's an equal length 4-length or a triangulated 4-length or a short upper bar, These angles are going to get you in the ballpark. And then around a 10-inch spread, a 9 to 10, no more than 10.5-inch spread on the rear end of your big tire slick car. Now, that will get you in the ballpark. Let's change gears and let's talk about a radial setup. So I'm going to share the radial setup for you here, and I'm using some new software, so bear with me. I'm going to open the radial setup, and what I want to do is show you based on my experience, where's a good place to start with a radial tire setup. You will notice if I come up here, you will notice the instant center length on this setup is 48.5 inches, 9.1 inch instant center height. And with this actual customer car, we were around 127 to 130% anti-squat. Please understand that there's no voodoo magic in these numbers. This is purely a place for you to have a known starting place on your car. You know, we are calculating the center of gravity height based on, most of the time, the camshaft height in the car. Well, you know, depending on where your turbos, or if, like me, if you have a roots blower on top of a tunnel ram, your center of gravity height is going to be higher than the camshaft. If you have a bunch of turbos mounted up above that, turbos are heavy, and depending on how far up above the camshaft they are, this can change. So please understand, whenever you're plotting your 4-link and you use the camshaft height, it could not be exactly where your center of gravity height is. So here again, and I've said this in many videos, these numbers are just a known place for you to start, and then go out and test your car and see how the car responds at the track. All right, so radials. Where are we going to start with a radial? I'm going to recommend, at a high level, your power levels and everything else could change this if you go with the baseline suspension tuning package on my website. But if you get a bottom bar angle of around 2 degrees, 2 to 3 degrees uphill from the rear end to the chassis, so the chassis mount hole is a little higher off the ground than the rear end mount hole. And you see here on the rear end, it was 7.25 inches from the ground, and on the chassis, it's 8 inches from the ground, which is going to give me on this setup about a 2 degree uphill to the chassis. On the top bar, I'm going to be looking for around a 12 degree to 14 degree top bar angle down to the chassis. And in this example, we have a 12 degree rake going down to the chassis. And then you'll notice I do have around, a 12-inch spread on the rear end. I'm generally going to run a little more spread on the rear end to help get that radial planted quickly and to keep the radial planted through the run. That's very critical. Wheel speed on a radial is going to equal tire spin, which equals an aborted run or a dangerous run. So these are really important angles. If you have no plotting software, but you have an angle finder and you understand your values on the rear spread, if you can get around 10 or more, in this example, about 12 inches of rear end spread, about a 2 degree uphill bar angle, about a 12 degree upper bar angle down to the chassis, you're going to have a good place to go out and test. Now, based on your setup, you know, the instant center length is going to be pretty similar, because if you have the rear spread and you have these angles, then the instant center is going to meet somewhere around 46 to 49 to 50 inches. Now, your anti-squat value could be different based on where your center of gravity is on your setup. But here again, anytime I work with people, I'm trying to always do the 3 things that I end every video with, and that's: I want you to go fast, I want you to go straight, and I want you to be safe. So looking at this situation here, you can have a pretty good setup on how to get your radial car going down the track. Now, here again, shocks are critical, especially on a radial car. yes, you can run 5-year-old single adjustable shocks. You can run DD501 QA1s or off-the-shelf Vikings or off-the-shelf Strange engineering, whatever you want. You can go out and try to make that work. But as you get up in power level, as you progress in how much torque and boost or power outers you're bringing in on your car, and depending on how good the track prep is, those are pretty key fundamental things. Now, on a radial prep, one of the things you can do, because I don't want you topping out your shocks as you go down the run, if at all possible. I always want to have some shock travel left in the shock. As you start topping out shocks, you're going to begin to get the shock in a situation to where it's not able to function properly, and you're going to end up damaging that shock, or more worse than that, you're going to end up getting yourself in trouble in a run, which could lead to a bad situation for you and whoever's next to you. And we don't want that to happen. Remember, we want to be safe. So in this situation, one of the things you can do is get your car set up. And this video is not meant to talk about coilover springs and shocks, but I have to address these in a high level. You take your radial car, you get it off the ground, and you let the rear end droop down. Generally, on a radial car, the car is not going to separate any more than when the top bar is level to the ground. And what I mean by that is, if this top bar right here, as you let the rear end droop in your garage and you're simulating separation on the rear end, you're simulating how far is it going to separate. When this bottom bar is level to the track, you're generally not going to separate more than that. So you can measure your shock installed height with the car loaded and all the weight on the ground or on the chassis. And then you can take that and you can look at where is it whenever I let the rear end droop and get the top bar level to the ground. Is my shock topped out? Am I binding the shock, or will the shock top out and not let the bar get level to the track? If so, you need to adjust your shock installed height, or you need a longer travel shock. These are just fundamental principles that you need to understand when it comes to shock travel, shock installed height, and things such as that. I cannot overemphasize that enough. Now, on the coilover springs on a radial car, I've gotten questions on that a lot lately, and I'm looking for a softer, longer spring. I do not want the spring all the way extended with the top bar level. If you let the rear end droop and the spring is loose and bouncing around with the top bar level, then you need a longer spring. I want to keep the combination safe, and I want the spring to stay involved all the way through the run as the shock extends and as the car separates. So I can't tell you exactly what weight spring to start with, but it's going to be a longer, softer spring than it would be for a big tire or small tire slick car. That spring on a radial car sitting level with all the weight on the car, I don't want it in coil bind either. So I want about 1 inch of shock travel for compression with a radial car. I don't want the shock bottomed out at ride height, because now you're going to damage the shock or get yourself in trouble. I want around 1 inch of compression travel on the shock. I want the spring not at coil bind, but I want it soft enough so that it's really compressed. So I'm storing that energy in the coil spring. And then as the shock extends and the top bar is level to the ground, I want a little bit of extension travel left, and I want a little bit of spring travel left. You're going to have to mock this up and figure it out for yourself. Now, with regard to shocks on the big tire slick or the small tire slick car, let's talk about that real quick, because I want you to make sure you understand some of the same principles that we're talking about with the big tire slick car. Now, here in this situation, I want the big tire slick to, at ride height, generally on a big tire slick or small tire slick, I'm going to stop saying that. I'm just going to say slick. On a slick setup, you want a spring that's going to be a little heavier than a radial setup, but I want the spring to, let's say you're running a 12-inch spring and on a slick, I want the spring loaded with the car and the weight and everything on the springs. I want the springs around 8 inches of compression. And that generally is a good place to start, a 12-inch to an 8-inch spring loaded. I can't tell you what weight that is. You're going to need to understand your car's weight to figure that out. But you're generally going to want to have a spring that is going to have around 25% compression with the car sitting race ready, ready to go. And you want to make sure for a big tire slick that you have enough shock travel as well. In this scenario, you are going to compress the shock a little bit. So with this setup right here, in this instant center, you're going to compress the shock some. So I don't want the shock to bottom out and crush the shock during the run. I generally like to have at least a 5-inch, preferably a 6-inch travel shock for my slick cars. And I'm generally going to err on the side of having the shock a little bit past half of the shock travel, so that on a 6-inch shock, I want 3 inches of compression. Now, we're not going to compress the shock 3 inches per se, and that's where your spring comes in to help control some of that shock movement. But you want to make sure you have enough travel, extension, and compression. I wish I could give you all the formulas, but each car is unique. So that's some of the key points of understanding baseline suspension setups for shocks, springs, and your 4-link bars based on a slick or a radial. Hey, let me just say that one of the things I've recently offered on my channel is a membership option for $3.99 a month. What I'm beginning to do is I'm going to try to offer more live streaming, more content for members so that we can have more interaction and I can give more attention to those who are continuing to support the channel from a membership perspective. I just can't answer everything that's going on out there, but this is one way to do it. And I don't want to make this crazy expensive for $3.99 a month. I mean, a coffee a day at Starbucks or some other Dunkin' Donuts pays for this membership, and I can give more attention to the members. I will be doing some members-only videos, members-only live stream, members-only posts. So, I will continue to offer content to my subscribers like this video right here, but I would encourage you to go to my channel and check out what's going on there. If you take a look at my channel, you can see on this screen right here, if you go to KevinWilsonSBC and you look, there is a join button. And on every video that you watch of mine, if you're not a member, there's a join button that you can click on and join up for $3.99 a month. And that would be a huge, huge help to what we have going on with all the expenses and the time it takes to put this stuff together. Let me just say, and we're going to go ahead and close this video out. Thank you for all of your support. Thank you for allowing me to post some of my fitness journey videos and posts and some of my wellness journeys and my health journeys. I know that a lot of you guys aren't necessarily interested in that, and I wish you were more interested in it, because a lot of the racers I work with, they could stand to be healthier, not just for their race cars, but for themselves and their families. So I know that most of you are here because of my suspension content, and I appreciate that. But me losing 110 pounds and me embracing the carnivore lifestyle has been a life changer for me. And I would definitely encourage you to consider looking at some of those videos and seeing if they can help you get healthier, so that not only will your car perform better, but you can be around longer for your families. Just remember, in everything that we do and everything that me and Dad work on, we're trying to do 3 things. We want to go fast, we want to go straight, and we want to be safe. Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Tu, 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 tu.